Hello, this is Talking Europe on France 24, and it has been a very busy week for Europe and for France. We've finally gotten a formal idea of why the Gilets jaunes protesters are so angry and what many of them want to happen next, this in the shape of a report on a great national debate organised by the government over recent weeks. Preparations also ramping up for the European Parliament election in May. That includes the United Kingdom formally beginning its preparations for that election, despite all sides having said for weeks that they don't want the UK to actually take part. I ought to add that we are recording this programme before we know exactly which way the Brexit process is going. With us to talk over some of the big concerns for France and Europe at this turbulent time is Jean-Claude Trichet, former president of the European Central Bank, before that governor of the Bank of France, now chairman of the Bruegel think tank. Thank you very much for being with us again on Talking Europe.
It's a pleasure.
Let's start by talking Brexit. The UK has once again avoided a no-deal exit. Preparations had very much been happening, been paid for on both sides, though. It seems that perhaps no deal would have just been a leap too far into the unknown.
I hope very much that no deal will not be, I would say, at the end of this short period of time. And nobody expects that, really, I think. That being said, we must have the UK deciding. I mean, the UK is divided to an extent which is unbelievable. Not only the parliament is divided, the government is divided, the cabinet is divided, the country itself, England on the one side, Scotland and Northern Ireland on the other side, when you look at the results. So again, it is the UK which has to decide, as simple as that.
In terms of the economic impact, your specialist area, of course, do you foresee a negative economic impact on Europe of allowing Brexit and all the uncertainty to continue via a longer extension?
Well, of course, it's better from the economic standpoint than the no deal, which will have a big influence, big negative influence, both on the UK and on the rest of Europe. That being said, clearly, uncertainty is no good for the economy in general, for investors in particular, for the economic agents. So it would be very bad to continue to have uncertainty on what is likely to happen. At a time you have to be in a more certain universe. I hope very much that there will be a deal. And the deal is much better than no deal. Still, of course, you have to decide. And the decision remains entirely in the hands of the UK democracy, which was the exemplary representative democracy historically, and which is demonstrating today, and it's dramatic, that representative democracy does not function well anymore. And it is at the very place where it was born.
Would it perhaps be better, considering all the uncertainty, for the EU27 to perhaps just let the UK go and make a clean break now? There have been arguments in favour of that here in France in recent weeks.
Well, there have been arguments all over Europe, I have to say we are exasperated by this incapacity of the United Kingdom to decide. But I don't trust that even if you are unnerved by the situation and the permanent call for new delay and so forth, nevertheless, you will not play the game of the worse. And I would not like, of course, at all, that the emotion, which is now widespread amongst the 27, would call them to take a decision which would not be optimal.
You and I spoke almost exactly a year ago. Much has happened since then, including here in France, the country being rocked by months of these weekly Gilets jaunes protests. Did that take you by surprise, just first of all?
Well, I think that all observers were taken by surprise, obviously. There is no doubt on that. That being said, when I look at the advanced democracy and the problem they have, say, populism, as we say today, I see President Trump in the US, I see Brexit in the UK, I see the extreme right in Germany, I see the new government in Italy, and the yellow vest for me are something like the French illustration, the French emblematic illustration of this kind of frustration of a large part of our fellow citizens in the advanced economy. So this is something which is very serious. And what is important is to understand why and to understand what is the appropriate response, of course, to this frustration.
I mentioned in the introduction to the programme, the government's embarked on this national listening exercise that they called the Grand Débat, the Great Debate. I'd like to give you and our viewers just a couple of statistics that have come out of that. Nearly 2 million answers and comments were made online at granddebat.fr. Over 27,000 letters and emails sent in. More than 16,000 town halls made comment books available to the public. There were over 10,000 local meetings, and they drew in nearly 500,000 participants. Now, the Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, gave a summary of the results of all of this in recent days. Let's just watch this report together.
For 3 months, the French nation had its say, and the government now says it's listened. On Monday, under the glass roof of Paris's Grand Palais, the findings of the Grand Débat were made clear to see.
We have reached a situation where hesitating would be worse than making a mistake. It would be wrong. The need for change is so radical that any conservatism and any timidity would be unforgivable.
Some 1.5 million French voters took part in the deliberations, either online or at one of 10,000 town hall meetings held up and down the country. The frustrations expressed during those debates fall into 4 categories, which Edouard Philippe has pledged to tackle. Participants believe there are too many taxes and public spending is too high. The disparities between Paris and France's regions and territories should be reduced, and the very notion of direct democracy needs to be bolstered. Voters also want more to be done to address climate change. Crucially, 2 of the Yellow Vests' key demands, namely the reintroduction of a wealth tax and the introduction of popular votes allowing citizens to suggest laws, did not feature in the Prime Minister's speech. The government's opponents say the response is just an old record they've heard many times before.
All that Edouard Philippe has done here is confirm his government's wishes and the policies they pursued for the past 2 years.
With the flame of Yellow Vest discontent still flickering, Philippe addressed both houses of parliament after the big reveal. The Prime Minister confirmed President Macron will soon set out the next economic measures his government wants to take.
Well, Jean-Claude Trichet, just one of the main points to take out of that. The French want fairer taxes, what they see as fairer taxes. The Prime Minister mainly talked about reducing taxes for ordinary people and talked about also how that would mean cutting public spending. He didn't, though, talk about raising taxes for the wealthy or for big corporations. Do you think perhaps the government has missed the point here?
We will see exactly what is the response. The response will be given by the President of the Republic. And what we heard was the summing up of the request coming from those people that have expressed their views. By the way, it was an absolutely fantastic way of dialoguing with the fellow citizens in circumstances which are very exceptional. The main problem of France is mass unemployment. That is the French anomaly that we are living with practically since the first oil shock, so since a very long period of time. And the clear responsibility of the government since the very beginning was to say we have to reform France in order to have progressively full employment, because mass unemployment is a cancer.
Yeah, it's 8.8% on the latest figures.
I would say what I understand from the government is that they want to echo a lot of things which have been said by the people of France, and at the same time not put in jeopardy the fight against mass unemployment, which was really the goal from the very beginning. In terms of taxation, if you are taxing even more a lot of people in France that are already tempted to go abroad because taxation is too high from them, then you fight pro-unemployment. You are giving more unemployed in France. If the people, again, that are entrepreneurs or that are able to finance new ventures, create new jobs, are going abroad. And there is not a single country immediately out of the French borders where you have, for instance, a taxation of the wealthy people, which is as high as in France. So that's a problem. On the other hand, you have a lot of requests for the middle class, and that are certainly, that will have a response, in my opinion, when the decisions are taken and expressed by the president. So I expect a lot of things to be said, and I expect that they will not hamper the fight against mass unemployment, which is decisive in France.
It certainly is. But on the issue of purchasing power, this is, of course, a rich country. There is economic growth here, predicted to be twice as strong as Germany in 2019. So in that context, surely it's just not right that so many people are really feeling the pinch in their pockets to the extent that's been expressed by many of these people taking part in that great debate.
I mean, there is not a single country in the world where those who are at the minimum wage level would not say it's much too low. So I think we can all understand such requests. It is absolutely clear that they are, from the standpoint of those who are in that situation, fully legitimate, understandable. That being said, again, our main problem is mass unemployment. And we have mass unemployment in particular because the unit labor cost, if I may, the cost in general for the French productive sector is too high. That's the problem.
Well, I'd like to move on to some of the broader issues regarding the European elections now, coming up on May 23rd to 26th. They've been billed as the most important European elections ever. President Macron has said that this is the time to turn a page on a new Europe. Considering that turnout is projected to be between 40-45% once again, isn't that a bit ambitious?
Well, it's again a problem that we all have. If you look at the United States of America, you'll see that the number of fellow citizens that are voting is also very, very low. So it's a problem we all have. I think that what is not sufficiently known is that the trust of the European in their own European Parliament is significantly higher than the trust they have in their national parliament. I was very impressed myself with the figures. The European Parliament has 48% of trust and 39% of no trust, which is plus 9% for the European Parliament. And if you take all the national parliaments and all the citizens of the European Union, it is only 35% of trust for their national parliament and 58% of no trust, so minus 23%. To be compared to plus 9. So, you know, the idea that the European Parliament has no importance, that nobody pay any attention to the European Parliament, seems to me wrong from this Eurobarometer standpoint survey. That being said, of course, I would hope that the turnover would be much higher.
Well, there is another prediction which seems to go contrary to that statistic you just quoted. This idea that this election could see quite a wave of populists and more far-right and more extreme political elements coming into the European Parliament. And President Macron again said this is the battle of populists and progressives. I mean, is he right to do that? It seems to be raising the stakes.
Again, we will see. We are living in democracies. I would say, in many respects, when you look at the rest of the world, in exemplary democracies in Europe, and it is normal that all sensitivities are represented in the national parliaments as well as in the European Parliament.
Well, coming back to the economy, I'm very interested in the link between the economy and voting. There was a report recently that the French economist Thomas Piketty, for example, contributed to. It was saying that inequality in France had sharply increased in the last decade, widening social inequality. And there was a Swedish study that came out around the same time that linked widening social inequality with a greater trend for voting for the extremes. Are we perhaps at this point in 2019 seeing the impact of a decade of austerity and belt tightening playing out with voters, looking for different places to cast their votes?
I don't think that when you look at the famous Gini coefficient, namely an objective measure of inequalities, you'll have most European countries, most continental European countries on the side of these countries that are very unequal amongst the advanced democracies, advanced economy. The US is much an outlier with a lot of inequality, and they have augmented considerably under the work of
and the
Thomas
rich are seen
Piketty.
getting richer as well.
Thomas Piketty has been very much on the United States of America, undoubtedly. In France, I would say the redistribution is very, very important and has contributed to reduce the level of inequality. The problem is not necessarily only the objective inequality in comparison with all the other countries. And France is probably a case in point. It is the sentiment of inequality, the perception. And the perception of inequality on top of the objective inequality, which is not documented, I have to say, it seems to me, in Scandinavia or in France or in a number of European countries. But still, the perception of inequality, with the transparency of all, I would say, our societies, has certainly augmented, and it's a real issue. One of the issues that frustrated our fellow citizens and has to be, I would say, addressed.
Well, perhaps
it's the major problem of all advanced economy. The major political problem is to respond to the frustration of a significant part of our population.
All right, well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. But Jean-Claude Trichet, thank you very much for coming in to see us on Talking Europe.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks to you as well for watching, as always. Do remember you can catch our other programmes online at france24.com. We'll see you soon here on Talking Europe.
Here at France 24, we're taking a broad outlook by talking about the women who are reshaping our world.
En France 24 en español no tenemos temas vedados. Y eso se puede ver en televisión y en todas las plataformas que tenemos en Internet.
في فرانس 24 لا ننسى ونحجز لكم أسبوعياً تذكرة عودة للمدن والمناطق التي كانت في قلب الأحداث قبل أن تدخل في طي النسيان.
France 24, c'est la recherche permanente des meilleurs spécialistes pour vous permettre de déchiffrer l'actualité.
Claro que tiene algo especial, somos todos de distintos países y trabajamos con todo el corazón para entregar información en el momento preciso.
أخبار سياسية واقتصادية وثقافية وأيضاً رياضية بأعين خبراء رياضيين. هذه هي قناة فرانس 24.
We may be in Paris, but here on France 24, we very much have Europe on our minds, especially in the lead up to the European elections that President Macron has billed as a clash between progressives and populists. Join me and our teams on France 24 as we travel the continent, meeting everyone from first-time voters to big-name candidates in debates, live coverage and more, a host of European-flavoured specials in the run-up to the big vote. Join us on France 24 and France24.com.